This video is brought to you by Minimal Cases. Check out the link in the video description to find out more. Google's Pixel line has been pretty consistent for the past 4 years. The formula, a set of top shelf specs, a super clean build of Android with pixel experience, oh, and let's not forget a superb camera. However, a lot of us who enjoy using Pixel devices today were big fans of the Nexus line back in simpler times. I personally owned the majority of Nexus devices, and of course Android Authority covered many of them too. In fact, a lot of us look back on the Nexus series in particular with a sense of joy, but was it really that good, or are we just looking through rose-tinted glasses? Well, that's not as straightforward as you might first think. See, the Nexus line, unlike the Pixel series, was never really focused on one thing. The Nexuses actually covered different niches and submarkets, and so comparing them all directly to the latest Pixel devices is pretty tricky to do. In total, there were 14 devices spanned across 3 different product categories for a total of 6 years of releases. Within that, there were 6 different OEMs, 9 major OS versions, and so you can kind of see where the comparison issue lies. We could sit here and debate Google's true intentions for the Nexus line for ages, but my colleague Bogdan puts it perfectly. It would be like calculating the average height of a roller coaster. You could do it technically, but it wouldn't tell you much about how thrilling the ride is. However, the similarities that do exist between the different Nexi are arguably the best bits. You got a super clean version of Android with the fastest software updates since Google was the one making the software. This was more important and impressive back then because other OEMs were including really heavily bloated skins that would take forever to be updated, and it's only in more recent years that has started to fizzle out when we've got more timely software updates. On top of that, Nexi weren't really that expensive compared to the competition. It was only really the last couple, the 6 and the 6P, that ended that trend, perhaps in preparation for the Pixel. But you've also got to remember that whilst the Nexus devices were great phones, they weren't perfect. There was a plethora of problems spread across the series like boot loops, battery expansions and screen burn-in. In reality, there were a fair few hardware issues. So why do Android enthusiasts tend only to remember the best bits of the Nexus series instead of the bad bits? Before that, a quick message from today's sponsor. Minimal cases are cases designed by people who hate smartphone cases. If you want to protect your phone but don't like the extra bulk that cases often add, a minimal case is perfect for you. Keep your device safe without turning into a walking billboard with cases from Minimal. Check out the link in the video description to get 20% off when you use the promo code AA20. Well, those of us who bring up the Nexus line in conversation are typically ones who are big fans of the Android operating system overall. With that, there's an inherent bias towards those phones that were closest to the Android development itself. There's also this thing called fading effect bias, which has been studied by psychologists for decades. It essentially means that we tend to forget bad things sooner and remember things that make us feel good for longer. This ties into the fact that a lot of us purchased those Nexus devices back in the day, and purchases can make you feel good. Ever heard of retail therapy? The purchases and the devices themselves made us feel different. Everyone had a Motorola or a Samsung or an iPhone, but we had a Nexus. We stood out, and that was cool. We were the ones using the phones with funky branding, wacky designs, and clean software. We were different. Of them all, the fan favourite was obviously the Nexus 5. It was priced well, it had a great size, came in red, panda and stealth colours, it was fast and had clean software, and of course it was memorable. I have a personal affinity with its successor, the Nexus 6. Sure, it wasn't the most popular, but it was massive, sharing an industrial design with the second generation Moto X. It looked stunning and had a great set of stereo front-firing speakers. It was one of the first phones that I reviewed, and I have great memories with it. If anything, the Nexus set of hardware wasn't amazing, but the idea of it was pivotal in creating software that lasts longer and is better and is more refined on other devices outside of the Nexus landscape. Not only in modern Pixel handsets, but also in devices outside of Google's integrated ecosystem, such as Xiaomi and Samsung smartphones, which have cut down a lot of bloat in the past couple of years. So, what's the takeaway? Well, that community, differentiation, and addressing the hardcore are all important things. The Nexus community much like that of OnePlus, was a group of like-minded Android enthusiasts who craved the latest and greatest software features in a unique smartphone release every single year. And the OnePlus community, just like those that came before it, is among one of the strongest of its generation. It's also how Google can sell 7.2 million Pixel 4s despite the device's clear disadvantages over the competition. And that about rounds out today's video, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Let us know in the comments what you thought about the Nexus line. Would you like to see it revived, and did you have a device back in the day? Whilst you're down there, please do hit like and subscribe to never miss a video like this one. I've been Ryan Thomas with Android Authority, and I'll see you later.